Okay, so I think, do we have Vince yet? We do. Vince has just arrived. We're so thrilled that you're there, Vince. This is Vince Redmond. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's joining Nancy and I. He joins us regularly once a month to be here with us to talk about different topics. And today we asked Vince to talk about levels of friendship, how we teach this to our kids, why it's important that we teach this to our kids, and how we learn and model this ourselves. Now, Vince, we had a question that came in that I think goes directly to this. Okay. Kate wants to know, hi, what should I do if someone makes fun of my disability as a boyfriend, but I still want to be with them? How do we stop the bullying? And I think this goes right to the heart of why this is so hard, because we can understand, like, we have a relationship with somebody and we've already defined it. This is my friend or this is my boyfriend. And then they do something that is, making fun of the disability is not appropriate, right? And how do we then take that and translate into, is this the person that should be in my life? How do we communicate that? How do we decide when it's time to let go of somebody? Because I think we all have people in our lives that are, not always our best,
not always
the best to be a friend to us, right?
Right. Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot. Welcome, Vince.
Good morning
Welcome.
to you and to everyone. Now my head's spinning. There's like 8 questions there.
Yes.
I think that when we're looking at friendships, that's always kind of backpedal a little bit to oftentimes, individuals on the spectrum, so children to teens to young adults, have difficulties understanding social communication, social nuances, social skills in general. So we want to see every situation differently, right? So given the situation that's the message about bullying and making fun of, I'm not sure if it was from someone in the relationship or someone outside the relationship making fun of a boyfriend.
It's a boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's a boyfriend.
Making fun of the girlfriend.
Right. Right.
Correct?
And she wants to stay in the relationship, but wants to know how to handle this issue of him making fun of her disability.
Right. So the first thing is let's make sure that everyone's understanding of what's going on. So my first recommendation would be for the girlfriend to have a sit down with the boyfriend and say, what did you mean when you said whatever, right? Or what was meant by this action? So then this way the boyfriend has the opportunity he's going to do one of 2 things. He's going to explain, maybe it was a misunderstanding, and explain what he meant in a low stress environment where he's able to articulate what he means. Or 2, he's going to realize he's not being appropriate. He's not being careful, and thoughtful and compassionate. And that gives him the opportunity to apologize and say, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And now we can have a conversation on how that hurts her by hearing that from someone that's one of the most closest people to her, right? And how she felt that was a violation of their relationship. So I think the first thing to make sure is let's sit down and make sure that the way we're feeling and the way we're interpreting things is what was meant by the speaker. And then if it was, then that speaker or the boyfriend in this situation has the opportunity to realize he was being a jerk and he needs to make up for that.
Yeah. I think, both of these aspects are really important, and Nancy, jump in wherever you want to, but I think sometimes we forget that communication piece, that it is important to go back and go, okay, so for instance, like you said, what did you mean? I have a friend who I love that when something happens, like, sometimes you're with a bunch of people and there's like something needly gets said, and her expression is, she goes, what just happened? It's like this crazy, what just happened? And while everybody's still standing there, what just happened? And then, sometimes somebody will go, what do you mean? And she'll go, well, that thing that you just said, what was that? And then it's all out in the open. right? And then the person has an opportunity to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm crabby, and that was inappropriate. I should not have said that. Like it really raises the level of the conversation, and I think raises the level of the friendships. Sometimes, though, we just assume, well, that person is hurting me and wanting to hurt me. And then we start to shut down, and then the relationship starts to deteriorate. So that communication piece is important. But Vince, what about when you communicate to somebody and they double down on their, that they're like, well, it's, I get to say what I want to say, and if it hurts your feelings, that's just your problem.
Mm-hmm. And those are people we don't want to be around, right? If people are going to be mean to you, regardless of who they are, these aren't people we want in our lives. So if someone's doubling down and saying, well, I'm just a jerk and I'm going to be mean to you, take it or leave it, leave it.
But
Right?
I think that is one of the hardest lessons. And I don't know if it's hard for men and women, but I think most of the women I know, this is really hard. Is that like sometimes if we like the person, we don't want to know. We don't want to, like, it's almost like we don't want to communicate to say, hey, I need for you to stop doing that for them, because then they keep doing it. And then it's like, we're 100% sure they're not into us. It's that, like that book, He's Just Not Into You.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, what do you, have you experienced this in your life where it's like you like the person and you just keep wanting it to get better, but they're showing all the signs that they're not treating you well?
Yeah. I think sometimes it's difficult, as you say, particularly for women, to give up and, you know, take the social cues and the other cues that this person doesn't want to have a relationship with you. And oftentimes, like I was saying with Wyatt, with that particular bully, he seemed to be almost more attracted and try harder to get the attention and get the relationship and to, you know, foster a relationship.
And I think I personally have been guilty of that in my life. Earlier, Vince, we talked just briefly about this, and I said that when Jem was little and the therapist, there was a kid who was bullying him on the playground, and the therapist said, okay, we're going to work on levels of friendship. And he explained, you know, that you have a best friend, and then you have friends, and you have acquaintances, and you have people you don't know, and you have, you know, first responders who are people you don't know, but you have different rules with them that you can go up and tell them things. And so they explained all this to him to the point where he got it. And then they said to him, so when a friend is hurting you, that you have to convey to them, you're hurting me, please stop.
Yes.
And then if that person continues to do it, then you have to understand that person is not your friend. And it's almost like picking them up out of that category and deciding, okay, which category do they go in? Do they go into acquaintance? Which means that we still speak to them, but we no longer trust them with our deepest things. And when they were explaining this to him, it was like somebody had pulled back the curtains, and I went, oh, I don't think I'm doing this in my life. I don't think that I should, like, I have people, oh goodness me. It was so eye-opening to me. But so for, and then I go, oh, okay, I know this now. But for this young woman who's saying, I really like this guy, I want to stay in a relationship with him, but it's making me feel bad that he is making fun of my disability. I love you saying, you know, you got to sit down and make it clear. But the bad news is, if that once you've made it clear, if that person persists in doing it, then you got to take another look at it, right?
Right. And this all comes from our desire to want to be liked and our desire to want to be accepted. This is everybody, right? Individuals on the spectrum, individuals on the spectrum. We all have a very deep desire to be accepted and to be liked. And I think a lot of times we stay in these relationships because we feel that if we do something different, if we do something more, or we do something greater, then we will be accepted and liked. And we stay in these relationships because we want that attention and we want that affirmation. The problem is if it's, now again, there are, in every relationship, there's times where we have to be vocal and there's times we're going to get hurt, but we know when someone's continuing to do it all the time versus having good conversations. You heard someone, we sit down and we talk, what did you mean by that? What was said, you know, and you break it down, and either the speaker or the boyfriend in this situation accepts responsibility and says, hey, I was a jerk, it was a bad day, I very much apologize. Or he says, well, well, if we get a lot of, well, that's just the way I am, then this isn't someone who's going to accept you. This is not someone who's going to give you positive attention. This is someone who wants to be chased. This is someone who wants you to chase after them. And this isn't healthy for us. So I think we have to look at that desire for attention. And like we said, if we're looking at circle of friends, we look within the circle of people we already know we can trust. We already know that will give us good attention, and let's spend more attention with them. It could be family, it could be certain friends, neighbors, people in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and so forth. And then we get to this person now moves to the outer layer, which is now acquaintances and people that we know. And that's okay. People we know lots of people that are just people that we know, but yet we don't get as hurt by them because we're not trying to give them. Sorry,
you're very sought after gentleman.
Well, I thought it would stop after 3 rings, but by the 7th ring, it's not stopping. So we want to make sure that we increase the people in our inner rings of circle of friends. Now, if someone has to be, so and so, ejected out of that realm and move into an acquaintance one, that's okay. And hurt is okay, right? Hurt is a natural feeling. And I think some of the learning we have to do with individuals on the spectrum is teaching them that hurting is okay. It hurts, it's uncomfortable, we don't like it, and we try to avoid it, but for the greater good, it's okay. It's a very natural response because we cared for someone. We put effort, resource, time into someone. We liked being liked, right? But we want to make sure this is someone who's going to give us back, just as much as we're giving to them. And if they're not, then we have to look at, moving them outside of our close circle of friends.
So Jordan has written in and said a very interesting point here. Sometimes that friend just doesn't know how to behave. Sometimes I think it's just my lesson to look at it in a different perspective if you think he has some good intentions.
Right.
And I think that that's a really important point, especially when people are young or when people are having difficulty with something. We don't just throw people away. But we try to teach them, hey, we're in this friendship together, and we do need to take their perspective and taking it. But for me, this comes down to boundaries, Vince. Like, when is it too much?
Right. And again, I don't want to in any way, I'm glad you brought that up, because as I'm thinking, I want to make sure everyone understands. I'm not saying let's abort relationships right away the first time someone says something that was mean, or says something that hurt our feelings. By all means, no. We do want to get to know that person better. We want to have multiple conversations of sitting down and saying, am I understanding this correctly? What are you trying to say? What did you mean by that? Even if it's, happening on a regular basis, sit down, communicate, because that's how we gather more information. That's how we will know if someone's intentions, as Jordan was saying, are pure and good, and we're just misinterpreting it, or they're good and they're just having a hard time right now because of X, Y, and Z reasons, right? It could be the pandemic or job or their own family or whatever, right? They might be having some problems, so they're having a hard time giving me what I want. But at least now we understand, and we're able to respect that and hold those boundaries. We'll be able to say, okay, I respect you in the situations you're in now, so I'm going to support you right now and help you through that, and then you can help me through my thing. And we establish boundaries like that. But when there is no good intentions that come out, and we continue to feel over time that my feelings continually get hurt, or I continually am feeling sad and not fulfilled in the relationship, it's at that time we have to look at, is this relationship healthy or is it harmful?
Yeah, I know I have some friends who are adults on the autism spectrum that are just sometimes painfully honest.
Mhm.
And they and I would say that there are times when I've had the opportunity to get my feelings hurt by their being honest. But I think in getting to know them, I realized that they were coming from a pure place of not wanting to hurt my feelings, that the intent was in no way to hurt my feelings any more than, I always laugh. I went to visit one of our centers and I was there very early in the morning, and I don't think I had all my makeup on that morning. But the little kids, they'll come up to you. This is pre-COVID. And twice within an hour, one little kid came up to me and I was saying, hello, good morning. And he looked at me and he said, you're old, right? And I immediately cracked up, and the person was like, oh, we don't say that. And I said to them, oh, it's fine. I am old. It's okay. And and I said, yes. And he said to me, you look like my grandma. And I said, oh, your grandma must be beautiful. Right. And I didn't take any offense to it. Right. Because I knew it was coming from a place of pure love, and it just is. And there's no way to take offense from that. Then the next child came up to me and said, you're fat. and it was like, well, but I have learned to look at that in a different perspective and to enjoy my friends who are on the spectrum, because I know they're not going to say something to me just, to make me
Flatter
feel
you.
better.
Yes, they're
Exactly.
brutally honest. Children are brutally honest as
Yes.
well. And a lot of individuals on the spectrum they don't have that filter necessarily.
Yeah.
It's those social norms I talked about, right? They don't understand the social norms, right? Like you were alluding to, Nancy. They don't know the game, right? They don't know you say these things to make them feel good, even if you don't feel it's true, right? I mean, you white lies and kind of the social appropriate responses that we give, right? You don't talk about age, there's like there's off limit conversations. You don't talk about age, you don't talk about weight, our kids and individuals on the spectrum don't understand that. And again, like you said, it's genuine. They're not trying to hurt you, right? Where we might feel that we're being hurt, they're just labeling, or they're just noticing, or they're just saying something like, again, like you were saying, maybe they don't like your blouse and they don't want you to wear that because maybe other people think it's ugly. So they're being nice by saying, that's an ugly blouse, you shouldn't wear that.
Yes.
Now that might be very hurtful for us,
Yes.
but in their mind, it's like, she shouldn't wear that because other people might not like her. Right.
So I do think that intentions, I'm sorry, Vince, I cut you off, but I do think that intentions are important, and knowing where the person is coming from. And I don't know, for both of you, but I have friends that I know that are good friends, but I know that like one friend is not good in crisis. Like they're just not the person I would lean into for a crisis, but they're really good at other things, and I love them and adore them, but I accept the fact that they're not good in a crisis. And when I'm in a crisis, I don't go to them and go, hey, I need your help, because I know that they get shut down. I don't think we're talking about those kinds of things. I think that, we need to accept people for who and what they are. But if somebody it's just like that Annie Lennox song, where she says, walking on broken glass. There's a line in it when she says, because if you really want to hurt me, then there's nothing left to lose. And if somebody really wants to hurt you, if they understand that hurts you, and then they go, well, I want to do that because it hurts you, then we get into boundary land. I think.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're trying to determine in all relationships, is who genuinely wants to be with you and have the intent to be a good friend, a good lover, a good spouse, a good boyfriend and girlfriend. And then those who are there to hurt you for their own personal need or their own personal gain. There's lots of people out there, and I hate to say it, that get positively reinforced by hurting others. Now, it's absolutely terrible, and I can go into psychological reasons why they do that, but those are the people we don't want in our lives. Those are the people we want to make sure we have a very solid boundary, that they're on the other side dealing with their own stuff, not hurting us for their own need. Because you're right, our biggest weakness is if we continue to let people in that are hurting us, with no intention of loving us.
So this becomes, I'm sorry, you talk, Nancy, because I'm hogging the time.
Vince, it's important to teach our kids social cues that make them aware of the various types of relationships and friendships, so they know when they get a block like that, that they avoid those types of relationships.
Right. And again, all the different levels, right? We're talking from, or the ages, we're talking from your youngest 2, 3, 4-year-olds up to your teens. So it's going to be a little bit socially different in each developmental stage. But absolutely. And this is an ongoing lesson. This isn't something that you teach at elementary school and we leave it be, right? This is something that as parents and clinicians, we want to continue to teach them as social relationships become more complex. As they move on and move up, we have to reteach, what are we looking for in the friendship? What are we looking for in an intimate relationship, right? If we're looking at early kids, we're talking about kids that share, kids that enjoy the same thing, kids that play without being mean, kids that include rather than exclude, right? And we're looking at those different facets. When we move into teenagers, young adults, now we're getting into more of those nuances of what they say, how they say it, how, are they genuinely interested in the things that you are? Do they listen to your interests and opinions, or is it all about the things that they're interested in and things like that? So this concept, and I'm glad that you guys have brought this up, is something that's an ongoing uh, uh, relationship, or an ongoing uh, learning experience for individuals on the spectrum, because our social relationships are constantly changing. They're constantly getting more complex. Even now, when we go from young adults to middle age, our middle age relationships are different than they were when we were in our 20s, right? They're more mature and more understanding, and that will change again as we move into our later years. So this isn't something that is learned one time. It's not something that's just learned. It's an ongoing learning experience. And us as parents and clinicians have to remember that. We have to remember that this is something that we want to continually support our friends on the spectrum.
Well, I want to go one more than that, Vince, because I think, I get an opportunity to talk to a lot, as you do, to a lot of caregivers, parents of individuals on the spectrum, and other people. They're not all parents, but they're caregivers. And I think, and Nancy, you can attest to this too, I think we go through this just as much. And when we have a child who's on the autism spectrum, sometimes it puts some of our friendships a little bit in a rocky place, that I am not friends with all the people that I came into this journey with, because some of them, like, it just didn't jive. Like, there were people who had a really hard time with what my new life looked like, that was centered around my son's treatment, and they had opinions about that and things that they wanted me to do instead of that involved things for them, and they really couldn't accept it. And some of them were family members, some of them were friends. And I hear this from caregivers all the time. Nancy, are you friends with some friends? I retained and I cherish them, but some friends went by the wayside.
Yeah, some friendships did not develop and mature in the ways that others did, and I couldn't be as honest with some of those people.
Yeah, it's almost like some friends that were like really good friends kind of got moved to another level, because it was like, I really can't share what I'm going through with you, because it's not like, and through no fault of theirs, but they just weren't in a place to like hear it and be supportive.
Right.
For whatever reasons, not necessarily, anything bad, but I had one friend who would not accept that my child had a diagnosis.
Right.
He just couldn't. And listen, I know that what it was that he did not want that for me.
Mm-hmm.
In the fairy tale in his head, he was like, no, you finally got to be a mom. You don't have a child on the autism spectrum. But it was painful to be around him, because he would disavow absolutely everything that we were doing. And he would go, you need to stop that. He doesn't have autism. He's fine. And then he would treat my child in a way that was not appropriate. And we would that, you know, like he would make fun of something that he didn't understand, and we would go over here, let's talk about this, don't do that. And he'd be like, no, you just gotta toughen him. You know, it didn't work, it didn't last. We were done.
And
And
some
I
people
think,
don't have that bandwidth, right? They don't have that bandwidth to understand the depth of what we as parents go through, right? In that you guys go through with having a child on the spectrum. It's not something that anyone can really understand unless they're in it. And sometimes they just, like you said, they don't want to hear the bad. They don't want to hear the ugly. They don't want to hear the struggle and the strive that needs to be done. They want to live in the Pollyanna, it'll be fine. And I think that's for their own need. I think that's for their own anxiety. It makes them feel better because, like you said, if it's coming from a good place, they don't want you to suffer. So they're trying to just kind of
yeah.
keep it positive. But that actually, as you're mentioning, can be more damaging than good.
Yeah, and it's coming from a place, like, I know they didn't mean any malice, right? But it's coming from a place that they meant well, but sometimes even meaning well doesn't fit in your life.
Right.
And it's, but I think that boundaries are one of the hardest things on the face of the planet. I'm in a place where I'm wanting to make sure that I'm teaching that to my son, but I really got to check myself because I don't think I'm good at boundaries. And I got to be honest, Vince, I know a lot of women who say the same thing. Do you feel like it's men also, and I'm just only talking to the women, or do only women talk about it, or is it more women?
No, I think it's both, but it's demonstrated in different ways, right? When we're talking about social boundaries, we're talking about an infinite amount of different types of boundaries, right? We have boundaries in relationships, boundaries in intimacy, we have boundaries with knowledge that we share, we have, all different types of boundaries. And I think men and women experience and show boundaries in many different ways, right? Where you're saying that, women more or loose boundaries and trying to maintain friendships, but I think on the men's side, I think men put up too strong of boundaries, oftentimes too quickly, right? It's their self-defense to protect them. Me mad, me no hurt. And those boundaries come up very quickly where they're not willing to listen, they're not willing to feel, they're not willing to, as we were saying, go to the depths of understanding what this really means, what it really means to have a child, a friend, a lover on the spectrum, right? So I see that boundaries are difficult for both men and women. It's just displayed a little bit differently.
Nancy, are you good at boundaries?
Not as good as I want to be. Vince, how do we teach our kids how to deal with rejection?
Mm-hmm. The first thing, well, depending on the type of rejection, right? I mean, anytime we're teaching rejection is understanding why it was rejected and accepting it. I think one of the things that we try to do is, right, we want to protect our kids and we want to, stop the hurting as quickly as we can, right? I think that's every parent. But sometimes I think we might be doing a misservice if we're doing that too quickly because we want them to understand the rejection and that it hurts, and because it hurts, this is maybe why we want to be better at selecting our friends, looking at the friends, not chasing that bully, not chasing that guy or girl that really doesn't like us, and really showing them that this is a part of relationships that we're all experiencing. It's not you, Wyatt. It's not you, Jem. It's not you, Nancy, Shannon, Vince. Right? Everybody will at some point be faced with rejection and be rejected. It's why were we rejected? Let's look at it, break it apart. Why was it? Is it something that we did, something we can change, something we can do differently next time? Sometimes we do everything right and it's the other person and we say, okay, that person just didn't want me or didn't want to be my friend or didn't want to participate in my activity. And we say, it's okay to hurt. It's okay to be sad because that we thought they were friends. But once that sadness feels a little better, now we're going to look for new friends, right? Now the positive part comes in. Now we look for other people. We look for people that want to do the same activities or want to share or want to love, right? So it's, again, as we were saying, a circle of friends, it's definitely an ongoing teaching. It's not something that we can teach just off of 1 or 2 rejections, because as the social complexity of the relationships change, it's going to change. But my very first thought is not trying to dismiss the feeling, except, we want to feel the feeling and know why we're feeling the feeling. Does that make sense?
That's really hard.
Yeah.
I think it's great advice, Vince, but it's like I'm just picturing it's hard, right, Nancy? Because
Right.
to see our kids hurting.
Yes.
I mean, I think I'm not going to speak for you, Nancy, but tell me how you feel. I just want to go up to the other kids and go, would it kill you to be nice? Like I
exactly.
want to. That's what I want to do, but that's not fruitful.
Right.
Because then they'll be nice in front of you, but then what happens when you leave?
Right.
Oh, well, sometimes now they're not even nice in front of you.
Right.
They just, there are some in this world that we're in right now. I long for some aspects of the time period when Temple Grandin's mom, Eustacia Cutler, she says, the thing is that it was very clear to us in the post-World War II era that we all had to band together. And that when you were in a community, everybody's kids were a part of the tribe and they came with whatever they came and everyone had to accept them. That was what we were taught in school, in work, and in our places of worship, was that everybody had a place at the table and that your kid had to be nice to everyone. They didn't necessarily have to be best friends, but they had to be polite to everyone. And now we've gained other things. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go back to previous eras, but we have lost teaching civility to little kids, to up through teenagers, to just be nice to people. You don't have to, be best friends and trade necklaces, but be nice, be a human being.
Right.
And it's sad.
Well, so many times I think in the world today, our kids don't see modeling for that, for being kind. What they're seeing, particularly in the political world, which is the news of that is everywhere. They're seeing an uncivility. Shannon,
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. But I do love what you're saying, Vince, is that we have to allow them to feel their feelings. I think so often people will say, stop crying, get over it, suck it up. And yes, Marisol says have manners, but that comes from the home.
Right.
I think it's got to come from all sides.
Well, I was going to follow up with what Marisol was saying. Same thing, right? We are the biggest models. Our home is the biggest models of what we want our kids to look for and what we want our kids. So if we're being unkind, maybe not to our kids, but we're being unkind to others, or we're letting this political, landscape affect us, and we're yelling at the TV, or we're upset, or we're in the corner, complaining about things, right? Our kids see this. Right. So we want to make sure that we're being kind, compassionate, understanding, the best that we can. Doesn't mean we don't get mad from time to time, of course. But remember, the biggest, role model that our kids have are us.
Well, that's a very good point, Vince. And I take it very to heart because just 10 minutes before this show started, I was standing in my living room yelling at the TV. So I will work on that. Yes, because I was like, and I may or may not have said a few swear words. Just saying. Marisol says, but we have a big challenge, social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Yes, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But you're right, Marisol, it starts at home. Unfortunately, you guys, we're totally out of time. Vince, we so appreciate you. And we know this is a tough topic, but we so appreciate you waiting in. You gave us a lot to think about. Thank you for being with us. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day, Vince.
And to your lovely wife and your fabulous family. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. Love you both.
Thank you, Vince. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.